starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
The electricity here in Columbia, well, has been buzzing loudly all weekend.
Passion of the crowd in Williams-Brice Stadium is second to none.
And the rave breaks out in Columbia.
It is good!
Gamecock fans, welcome home.
See how it goes, but we'll be ready to go.
It's time to root.
Let's go, Carolina!
It's gone! Touchdown! What a hit! He baked it in! Can you believe it? Gamecocks have won this game!
Here are your hosts, J.C. Sherber.
Oh, watch him celebrate now!
Phil Molinex.
My wife doesn't like hanging around losers.
And Jamie Bradford.
I'm going to tell him, you look like you joined Duck Dynasty.
All right, greetings and good morning. Welcome aboard and welcome home. Inside the Gamecocks, the show live from the Sign-O-Rama Studios, the preferred sign partner of Gamecock Athletics, and built by the Barndo Co., the barndominiumco.com, where you can build that dream home that you have been long yearning for as low as $160 per square foot if you're in the Carolinas, Georgia, or in Tennessee. Welcome aboard. JC is going to be joining us here shortly. He is in Columbia, and as you can see, he's there just getting some things organized before he pops in with Phil and myself. We'll take you until 1 o'clock today right here on Inside the Gamecocks, the show, part of the all-new Chief Sports Network. If you've not downloaded our app, you need to do it. Go into your phone. It is free, and it is easy. And you can take us anywhere in the world. Make sure you tell your friends as well. The Chief Sports app, and that houses us and JC and Morgan, and soon to be much more than that. Also we will be housing, I should say, in our program today, both Hale McGranahan and Mike Morgan for Power Hour, presented by Palmetto Medicare, coming up at noon. Hale will join us at 11:30. And give us a full practice report as South Carolina continues to tick down the moments until we get to kickoff in Charlotte Saturday, September the 2nd at 7:30. Looking greatly forward to seeing a lot of you as well between the hours of 2:30 and 6:30 at the pregame Big Spur, the show / Carolina Rise party outside of Bank of America Stadium. And we are really excited about that. Phil, good to be here today, and also good to celebrate the great Alshon Jeffrey. When we got off the air yesterday, Steve Fink sent the email saying he will have his jersey retired at halftime of the Mississippi State game in Williams-Brice. Honestly, so well deserved and earned. And we'll ask the question, who will be next? Because it wasn't long ago that Coach Tanner kind of got a little group of guys and gals together and said, hey, we need to do a better job around here of acknowledging our former athletes. That was something that was at the top of his docket. They had begun to do that. Jadeveon Clowney's, of course, was last year, and now followed by Alshon coming up here in a little bit over a month. Going to be a brilliant night at Williams-Brice.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And like you said, well deserved for Alshon. I mean, incredible player for this team, his contributions, and then even beyond NFL. I mean, Super Bowl winner with Philadelphia Eagles. Just good to commemorate him in such a permanent way.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think that I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I've seen the criteria. I can't remember it all offhand. They sent that, I don't know when that was, 2, 3, 4 years ago, somewhere in there. That they will kind of go through to decide because remember, they're not retiring numbers, they're retiring jerseys. There's a big difference there. And if you start retiring numbers, you're going to run out of numbers at some point. So they're not going to do that, but they are retiring jerseys. And you think there's been a lot of great ones, but it has to be more, I think, than just or it is more than just what they did in a South Carolina uniform. You know, when you think about football, Phil, I mean, that era is where that era turned out. Like, we will tell these stories to our grandchildren that we got to see those guys play. Jadeveon and Connor and Marcus and Alshon and Stephon and, you know, the DJ Swearinger, the list goes on and on. But the criteria to have your jersey jersey retired is more than just being a great football player at South Carolina. What did you do after that? And what type of human are you? The whole nine. There's a lot of stuff that really goes into it. But it's interesting to think about who that next one could be. I think somebody's already said Connor, and Howard said Sydney Rice should be next. Yeah, I could make a heck of an argument for a guy named Marcus Lattimore and Stephon Gilmore. You know, you could. There's.
Well, they're going to run out of room, JB.
Yeah, at some point in time, they're going to have to make the press box bigger, right? But I mean, what you have to be careful when you have the conversation is not just who is your favorite player. It's not about just who is your favorite player, right? Or who did you think was the best player? Like, who was it? Period. And you know, the four that I think just got mentioned are the first four that are pretty much probably always going to come up, at least at this point in time.
Yeah. I wonder, is the plan only to do one a year? Do we know?
I don't think that there is a plan to do any number in any years. I think it's just when they feel like the time is right, that they will, you know, they'll do it. So I'm not sure. Alshon is, you know, retired, and so that I wonder if that. Well, no, that's not true because Clowney's not retired, and his jersey's up there, so that doesn't have anything to do with it. I'll be honest. I think that the next one that will need to be acknowledged, it won't have anything to do with a jersey. It's Steve Spurrier, and you know they tried to do this years ago, and Coach Spurrier he declined. He said, you know, I think that this is just my personal thought on it. I think that Steve felt like he knew that was way too soon, the way that it ended. And you know, leaving in the middle of the season like he did in 2015, and there were still some fans who were pretty frustrated by that. And I think that he didn't really want anything to do with that because he felt like he hadn't earned it. And but as time goes on, you know, the dust settles. That's over. You know that, and he would be at the tip top of my list because none of that Jadeveon Clowney, Alshon Jeffrey, any of the other players we're talking about, I'm quite confident that most of them are not at South Carolina. If not all, if he's not here. And what happened during their tenures do not happen if Steve Spurrier isn't here.
No, I mean, he was the straw that stirs that drink, right? So, I don't know. I put it at a couple more years, though. 2025. 10 years removed, you know, that way.
Getting old,
I think the old ball coach will still be kicking around.
Well,
I think at that point he'll be right to come on home.
Yeah, and I agree with that. You know, it's amazing because Coach Spurrier is still such a fan of South Carolina football. And, you know, he can't openly just come out and tell you he's pulling for the Gamecocks, but he does until they're playing Florida. Then he pulls for the Gators. And you know, it's just like he pulls for Duke. And, yeah, so I just he's the one. Now, what is that? You know, is it the Steve Spurrier sideline? Is it Steve Spurrier Field? I don't know. You know, I don't know what they'll do. Is it just acknowledging him somehow in the ballpark somewhere? I don't know. I don't know what it would be.
I like the field naming. I would be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, the one
Spurrier
thing
Field at Williams-Brice Stadium, I think, you know, hey, yeah, why not?
Yeah,
I mean, you don't have the greatest era in the game without the man. And
Absolutely.
So you got to do something.
I 100% agree with that. I know that there are still folks out there that hold animosity towards Steve, and they hold it towards Coach Holt, pretty much every coach that ever leaves. And we know how many people can't stand Will Muschamp. We know how many people can't stand Brad Scott. Of that entire group, there's only one that I really from what I understand, he's actually a really good guy. But Coach Scott, when he left and then going up to Clemson and him letting them carry him off their shoulders, and and this debacle of Williams-Brice, that was just rubbing it in the face, and he was doing a lot of dirty stuff behind the scenes. Muschamp's done none of that. Not saying I'm not like in big time support of. I'm just saying, of all the coaches who have been here and have left, and you get the fan reaction, and generally it's negative. There's really one of that group that deserved it, and that's Coach Scott and what he did. But like, Steve isn't here if it's not for Coach Holtz. I mean, this program was the laughing stock of college football, and for whatever reason, Lou Holtz thought, well, you know what? I was there for a year or whatever it was, a year or two in the 70s. I think I could probably get back there and help him get going. And he shows up, and that first year is total rebuild mode, and then he turns it into pretty much the two best back-to-back years you've ever seen. And then it didn't end well for him either, but he had left it on solid enough ground where Steve Spurrier thought, you know what? South Carolina looks like a good place for me. So, I'm so thankful both those guys ended up being head coaches at South Carolina, even though it didn't end the way that everybody wants it to end, but it rarely does. And so at some point in time, somebody will force Coach Spurrier to get in the car and drive up and be acknowledged in front of 75,000 plus fans at Williams-Brice Stadium. JC is back for the first time in forever, and we're glad to have him. He's in Columbia. And JC, we were just kind of recapping the fact that Alshon Jeffrey's jersey will be retired, kind of speculating on who might be next somewhere down the road. But I mentioned to Phil, above all else, at some point in time, it's going to be time to make sure that Steve Spurrier is acknowledged every time you walk into Williams-Brice Stadium. What's up, man?
Yeah. Well, I agree with you there, Jamie, completely. Sorry it took so long. I actually got here, got all set up. I need to lose some weight and get in better shape. So
because it's 158 degrees down here. With
the way this apartment is kind of structured, I'm going to have to stand and do the shows.
All right.
So I'm
that'll help.
Work off some calories here, folks, while I'm talking to you guys and all that good stuff. The train, if those of you familiar with 5 Points, the train just came by. So there'll be some very Columbia-esque things as we go through this journey here at Studio South. But look, I think this, guys. I think that when you talk about – we always talk about what the athletic department does wrong a lot. And I think this is one of the things they do right. That Spurrier era with all those great players, a lot of them were from South Carolina. All those guys, are among the all-time best players to ever play here. They not only did it in college, they did it in the pro level. You can say what you want about Clowney maybe not playing like a first-round draft pick, but I think there's reasons for that, including, a sort of undisclosed leg injury heading into the draft, and also the fact that Houston, Texas didn't know how to play him. I had as much to do with it as anything. But, Alshon Jeffrey, Super Bowl champ, great player for the Bears and the Eagles. I think look back to the history of this program, with the exception of baseball, it's gone through constant churn, reinventing of the wheel, crapping on the past, whatever. It took how many years for Dave Odom finally to get the guys from the McGuire era in men's basketball back together and honor them? Sure, they retired Roach's jersey or whatever. This seems to be a very focused effort. It's going on about 10 years since that era ended to get all those guys honored. And I think that's great. I think that's great for any program to do. I think it's important because, you talk about tradition or lack thereof. Tradition sells in recruiting. Tradition is what you build upon when you're building a program. And those players are all part of that tradition. And Alshon, man, he could have gone obviously to the bright lights of big city of Hollywood. He was actually committed to SC for a while the Trojans were rolling with guys like Mike Williams, who was kind of his type of receiver. And he elected to stay home and play for the Gamecocks, and was a huge part of a lot of really good teams, and a tireless worker. I picture him in my mind now running routes after practice, because I was here covering the team at the time, and at every practice he would stay after meticulously and work on that. So happy for him as an individual and a person, and proud of the University of South Carolina for recognizing one of their own.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, he deserves it, and I personally think, not to move on from Alshon, this is his moment, and can't wait to celebrate it here in just a few weeks at Williams-Brice Stadium. But for the sake of having something to discuss while we're on the air, when you think forward about who might be next, who are they going to throw around up there inside of the building at South Carolina, inside of the Rice Athletics building, it's hard for me to look past right now. I think Stephon would be at the top of the list because of what he's achieved in the NFL, the awards that he's won, what he achieved while he was at the University of South Carolina. I mean, when you look at the comparables, I mean, just they're kind of laying the red carpet right now for what it looks like. Look at Jadeveon, look at Alshon. They achieved it in college. They achieved it for an extended period of time at the pro level. Who else has done that? It's Stephon Gilmore. I kind of almost feel like he's teed up to be the next guy.
He may very well be based on those criteria. I would go with Marcus Lattimore, though. And I'll tell you why. Marcus Lattimore made more of a direct impact on the program than any of those guys. Marcus Lattimore also ended, sadly, his football career on this football field at Williams-Brice Stadium.
Yeah.
South Carolina retired the number and jersey of a player in the 50s that died, named Steve Wadiak. Now, Marcus didn't die, obviously, but you talk about somebody that kind of gave it his all and had such a big impact on the program. I don't know if Marcus wants that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't either.
So that may be an issue behind the scenes or whatever, but I think him, Connor Shaw, Stephon Gilmore, Melvin Ingram, those would be my next four. But I tend to agree with you, man. Gilmore, he's another one of those guys. Could have gone anywhere, stayed at home. Carolina beat Alabama on him. And that kind of seems to be a trend as well. Like, the guys, because Clowney, obviously they beat Bama on him head-to-head, number one player in the country. Beat Bama on Gilmore, beat SC and Lane Kiffin at Tennessee on Jeffrey. So, yeah, maybe that's what it is. I mean, of course, Marcus could have gone to Auburn or Penn State and all that too. But I think that's very helpful to the current regime. And they don't need any help recruiting in the state right now. I mean, they're kind of mopping up, but you show that to people. When you get a guy that comes along that maybe it's a little tougher to keep him in because he's got Georgia and he's got Bama and he's got Ohio State, and these guys. Of course, Cam Pringle had all those, but they look at that and they go, "Hey, I love this place. I can stay right here and achieve my dreams. And one day my name will be up there on the stadium. And I'd like to see them eventually, guys, have a big ring of honor all the way around the stadium." It used to be Carolina probably didn't have enough players to do that, right? Enough like legit All-Americans, All-Pro guys. But the Holtz and Spurrier era both kind of changed that. So I think that's it's tremendous. And, like I said, many, many times we talk about what the athletic department isn't doing right. This is one thing that they definitely are. And as someone that, follows this stuff, been following this program since 1986, it makes me very, very happy that these guys are getting recognized as soon as really, it's sort of kosher to do. 10 years, most of their NFL careers are at the back end. I think that's great.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when Coach Tanner spoke about this, and I guess it's probably been more than that. It was probably back in 2016 or 17, somewhere in there, because this was a point of emphasis that he had kind of brought to the table and saying, hey, look, we need to do a little bit better job around here acknowledging the great athletes. And I think that was kind of on the heels of, that whole push to put his number up on the wall at Founders Park, which at the time I think was still Carolina Stadium. And if you remember, Coach Tanner was kind of shaking his head like, I won because of my players. And I get it. Y'all can all thank me all you want to and give me all this, whatever. But I won because of my players. I didn't play the games. My players did. And so it kind of got it spinning to where we need to do a better job collectively, amongst the university. And, of course, this year on the baseball side, Kip Baltnight has had his jersey retired. As a matter of fact, Alshon, when it does get retired, it'll be the 10th jersey retirement for South Carolina since 2018 and the 23rd overall. So almost half of them all time have happened in the last 5 years. You're talking about Earl Bass and Kip Baltnight in baseball, Trinity Johnson and Joyce Compton in softball, Mickey Barber and now, of course, Dawn Ellerby, who we had on our program not long ago from women's track and field, Terrence Trammell from men's track and field, Olympian and Hall of Famer. I remember Clint Mathis, who played soccer for the Gamecocks. They've all had their jerseys retired. And now you've got to go along with Jadeveon last year, Alshon this year on the football side. So it has been a kind of a university-wide push. It's not just about football, which is great, and it shouldn't be. It should be about every sport. But clearly with football, that's going to be the one that gets the most recognition because there's 75,000 people that'll sit in there and watch that ceremony when it happens at halftime next month.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of men's basketball guys. I mean, I go back to like the 80s and Barry Manning, JoJo English, Joe Rhett in that era, and then through the Fogler era, obviously Mackey, Watson, maybe Larry Davis, if he was here long enough, Carlos Powell through the Odom era, Devin Downey from the Odom and Horn era. Devin Downey, pound for pound, was probably the best player to play men's basketball in South Carolina.
He was sick. He was ridiculous.
Yeah, he was sick. So
he was. I grew up loving Melvin and Larry and BJ like that. Those were my guys. That group there, them, William Gallman, Ryan Stack, Bud Johnson. That whole mid-late 90s group that played at South Carolina. Those were my guys. Loved watching them play. And then when you saw Devin Downey play and you were like, I don't know if I personally, because I wasn't around in the 70s, and I know people would have a disagreement with what I'm about to say, and that's totally fair. In my lifetime, I had not seen anything like Devin Downey in that uniform.
Yeah. And Sedaris Thornwell is going to have his.
Well, he has to.
Yeah.
Hell, I'd name the court for Sedaris Thornwell right now.
Yeah. At some point in time,
Colonial Life from Marino. Yeah,
and at some point, Frank Martin will be back, and that's so.
Yeah, that
was tough.
That might need more than 10 years.
That may need a little while, but
it's gonna need a little. While.
But I do think it's good to honor your history. I think there is a history here. A lot of people don't even know about. So I think that's tremendous. I mean, you don't know how many times I'll talk to people up in near Studio North, and they're like, "Oh, he played at South Carolina. I didn't know that." Like the Bears fans, they all know Alshon Jeffrey, because he had a good career. Alshon Jeffrey, he played at South Carolina. I did not know that. Wow. Yeah, he played somewhere down there, like Alabama or Auburn, someplace. What's that school? What's the school with the paw? And it's. By the way, guys, driving in today. Kind of an interesting story. I like to go if I'm coming from Atlanta, like from Chattanooga to Atlanta over to South Carolina. I like to if I'm coming here, I still go through the upstate because I like to take the little connector, and I don't really like the I-20 way. It's just boring. But I almost did not go I-85 because I didn't want to see the sunrise over Lake Hartwell. But I did because I was like, safety first, pettiness later. And sure enough, I saw a very average sunrise.
Yeah.
It was very average. The sunrise was not beautiful over Lake Hartwell.
Well,
it's great to be back in state.
I was about to say, here's the good news. You don't have to watch the game up there this year. You get to watch it right here in Columbia when they come rolling in. Let's step aside. It's 11:27. Hale McGranahan is patiently waiting, and Mike Morgan will be right behind him here. It's jam-packed Tuesday morning / afternoon. Make sure you've downloaded the all-new Chief Sports app, and make sure you click those 3 little lines in the upper right-hand corner when you've got it up, and share it with your friends, neighbors, family, and enemies as well. Let's grow it together. We are teed up by the coolest club in the Carolinas, travelingcountryclub.com. Cannot thank them enough for keeping me on the golf course, and many of you as well. Love what they do. 45 courses in 2 states. It is just a wonderful, wonderful club to be a part of. And the fall is quickly approaching. From the mountains to the seas, get out there when the weather gets good. Travelingcountryclub.com. Michael Manus is the owner. He's a Hall of Famer in my book, that's for sure. Former Gamecock golfer. We're glad to have him. Glad to have you. We'll be right back. The preferred sign partner of Gamecock Athletics is Signorama Columbia, and they should be yours too. A full-service sign company that handles design, production, install, and service, Signorama Columbia has helped to bring to life the perfect vision for so many all across South Carolina. Owned and operated by proud Gamecock alumni, they can handle all types of signage, including interior and exterior, vehicle graphics, and more. Go to Signorama.com and find the West Columbia location, or call them at 803-407-9284. Bring your brand to life with Signorama Columbia, and go Gamecocks.
Charleston Fitness Equipment is keeping South Carolina in shape. Clients have come from all over the Palmetto State to find that one piece of equipment that they enjoy that keeps them looking and feeling good. Whether it's a home rower, treadmill, elliptical, free weights, a home gym, or something else, Charleston Fitness Equipment keeps the mirror smiling back at you. Get in shape like the Gamecocks do. Visit charlestonfitnessequipment.com. Gamecock owned and operated, and proud partners of Inside the Gamecocks, the show.
If you're in the real estate market in the Low Country or even in the Midlands, please contact me, JB, with Coast to Coast Realty SC. You hear me and see me every day here on Inside the Gamecocks, and it would be an honor to earn your business. I've been around real estate my entire life, as it's somewhat of a family business. I work with an elite team of experts from loans to insurance to closing, and they make my clients and my life very easy. It really is elite. Coast to Coast Realty SC.com is where you can find our staff, and you can always reach out to me here as well. Go Gamecocks.
Coach O here, and when I'm not eating average jambalaya or celebrating endless summer in Destin, I like to eat pimento cheese straight off the bucket. And the only pimento cheese I like to eat is from Nana's Porch. It's award-winning. It'll melt in your mouth. It's good on a cracker. It's good in a bowl. It's good on a piece of bread. Also, don't forget Nana's Porch has a hell of a food truck. It's award-winning as well, and they're here for all of your catering needs. So get online, nanasporch.com. It's good. Coach O signing off. Endless summer, go Tiger.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is.
Everybody, welcome back inside the Gamecocks, the show. First hour of the show presented to you by Cindy Searfoss and the Coldwell Banker Kane Realty team here in the Upstate. Give Cindy a call for all your Upstate residential real estate needs. If you're interested in that average Hartwell sunrise that JC was describing to us this morning. Should be happy to help you. Give her a call, 864-414-5271. We are joined now on the McKellar Enterprises guest line by none other than Hale McGranahan. Oh, Hale, when I saw your name there earlier, it just said Hal. I was like, did we somebody screw up your name in a presser or something again? But it's back to Hale. I see.
I guess that was me who doesn't know how to spell my name.
That's all right. Neither is JC.
Well,
it must be a big
inside,
Spur
so,
thing.
No, the jersey's still at the embroiderers. Like,
see,
I'm like, how long does it take to add an R, lady? Isn't
Hal
the computer from 2001?
Yes.
Hal, like Shallow Hal?
Yeah, Shallow Hal. That was a hell of a movie, too.
I thought that was a great movie.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it actually had a good meaning at the end. Hey, guys, we got a list that got it right. Leave it to the Mannings, of course. The Manning Award watch list, which is sponsored by the All-State Sugar Bowl, has included in their 33 quarterback Spencer Rattler. That should not be a surprise, but for whatever reason it is, because he hasn't received a ton of recognition thus far. But with that award watch list out, the two top games, at least on paper, going into the first real weekend of the season, September the 2nd, have four names on it going against each other: May and Rattler, and then Travis and Daniels in that LSU Florida State matchup on Sunday night. So there you go, Hale. Spencer Rattler has made somebody's list. It's nice to hear.
Yeah, congrats to him. I guess he's ready to go pro now. So
he's teed up for it. I mean, do you think that's been driving him? Does he pay attention to that at all? Have you had a chance to talk to him?
As far as like the Drake May hype and that type of stuff, or
and the lack thereof for himself as well. Yeah,
I would think so. It's probably kind of a natural thing for him to be able to look at if he's needing an extra little push in a workout, or giving himself another reason to roll out of bed early in the morning to go to a workout. Maybe that can help him out a little bit. But I think he's pretty good at being a self-starter, and you know, he's here for a second year, so I think there's enough motivation, you know, beyond all the talking season hype and that stuff. I think he's pretty motivated, all things considered.
Well, we all do know who does keep receipts at South Carolina is the head coach.
Sure.
He knows when the watch lists come out. He knows who's on them too, and he knows who isn't. And but this one's got Spencer. All right. Got another scrimmage coming up this weekend, Hale. The big talk over the last, I don't know, what do y'all think? 48 to 72 hours really has been certainly headlined by Juice Wells. Wow, what's going on here? Juice Wells' absence from the program right now, dealing with a, quote, lower body injury. And then there's been some others that have had some things to deal with. That's generally always the point of conversation in the middle of August, because we can't see anything and there's nothing else to talk about, Hale. So outside of that, what has stuck out to you ahead of scrimmage number 2?
Just, you know, the kind of the list of guys who like you're talking about there, who've been out. You know, there have been a few others. He's not the only notable name. Juice Wells didn't. I mean, Trey Knox. Yeah, no, there are a few. Trey Knox was on the list with the a knee injury, and apparently he was back at practice yesterday. And
can you address that real quick? Because late last week he was going to be out for, you know, I don't know if you go to Twitter for your medical advice or not, but there was a lot of people there that were giving it, amongst other places. And 3 weeks, 6 weeks, and these guys, they know what they're talking about. But Shane said that he was going to be back Monday, which was yesterday.
Yeah, there was plenty of speculation or folks talking like they're in the know, which, you know, whatever. Some people know things, some people don't. But I think it's one of those things that I've heard about specifically with Trey Knox is that he should be back and ready to go. I don't think it was too serious what he's dealing with or had pop up late last week during practice. But as far as I know, he should be ready to roll for the North Carolina game. Whether or not he'll be 100%, I don't know. I think I have an idea. it's probably not. And you probably say that about a lot of college football players going into the first week of the season. If these guys are practicing for a month, like bumps and bruises are going to happen. Like Shane said on Saturday, it's football. Like people get hurt, people play hurt, people have to fight through things to stay on the field. That's just par for the course. So whether it's him or a guy like Grayson Howard who's been out a little bit, or some of the offensive linemen like Jackson Hughes who has been working back from an off-season thing, or Kason Henry who's been sidelined for a little while. Like there's a list of guys who are fighting through some things, and I don't think we're going to be looking at a depleted roster by any means for South Carolina when we're September the 2nd or whatever that Saturday is in Charlotte. I think there probably will be a guy here or there that's not playing, that whatever. Like, you know what, North Carolina's going to have the same thing. Farman's going to have the same thing 2 weeks later, and so on and so forth. It's just nature of the beast.
If people panic over the least little thing,
yeah,
I had to shut it off when the juice stuff started happening, because it was just like, people getting like pieces of information. Oh, bad news. And I'm like, look, man, I don't know. And I said this on 107.5 this morning, guys. I was like, if you work in the football building in a insignificant role, quit telling your buddies these things so they can put them on Twitter. And I was like, and if you're tweeting this, all that does is damage the program that you're supposedly pulling for and loving and wanting to be successful. So if you're pulling for your team and working for your team, then it does nobody any good to have this panicky information out on Twitter. But I can say that all I want, because I've told fans not to tweet recruits for years and years and years, and it doesn't work. I mean, there's literally a guy on Twitter now that says Gamecock recruit fam in his bio. He's like a working guy, working class guy. You could tell like his hobby is to get him, like, hey, bro.
Yeah, well,
you make the best decision for you, bro. I'm with you, man. Chiming in with adult advice,
Thank you. Yeah, that's very kind.
I'm preaching to the choir, but I know. But it was just frustrating because the Wells situation was not. I mean, it's just something that needs a little time, and I think it'll be fun. And I think, but anyway, screw all that, man. Who else is up at receiver? Okay, so forget about Juice for a while, because the next question is, and what we should be talking about instead of rehashing panicky injury situations, who do you think, in your opinion, taking Juice, I'm not saying he's out, but take him out of the equation. Who else could be a difference maker there? Because you get to it, and there's not a lot of returning production at receiver outside of maybe Eddie Lewis, but there's a lot of potential. So there's two P words we're kind of fighting with. What say you, Hale?
Well, Xavier Legette, probably the best place to start. He obviously had a monster performance in the bowl game, and like we've talked about before, he had a great offseason, was one of the, not just at the receiver position, but across the entire roster, one of the, top performing guys during the offseason workout program. Omarion Brown, there's optimism there that they can finally unlock some of that speed and potential and maybe put him in some positions to make plays and not do some things that he probably doesn't need to be doing, like we saw on occasion in the last year or two. So I would think that those two, specifically at wide receiver, are where that conversation starts. People probably want me to go ahead and say Nick Harbor, just given his stature as a recruit, and I certainly think that he'll be involved in some capacity, but I don't think we could sit here and say, hey, week one he's going to go out there and play 3/4 of the offensive snaps. I think that's a little unrealistic, but I do think they're going to have him involved and doing some stuff. What that looks like, we'll see. To me, receiver tight end can kind of be just a label for guys like Trey Knox and Josh Simon, but they're going to be heavily involved in the passing game too, obviously. Again, assuming Trey Knox is on the field. Heck, he started his college career as a receiver. Justin Stepp recruited him to Arkansas to play receiver. Josh Simon, similar to Trey Knox, is just a big body who's really athletic and can run and move really well. And again, maybe tight end's just kind of a label. So I would think it starts with that group of guys, and from where it goes from there, we'll see. But I would think that DeCarrion Joyner, he's a running back, and that's not just a label, but I think he'll have some involvement in the passing game. You've seen Juju McDowell have some involvement in the passing game. So I would say that group of guys that I just kind of rattled off there for Rattler will be heavily involved in the passing game, regardless of whether they're a wide receiver, tight end, or running back.
You should stir the pot and say Luke Doty.
Oh, yeah, I could have said Luke Doty.
I was hoping you'd do that. Stir the pot, Luke Doty. I think I don't know some, and I haven't always heard this, but I have heard some decent things about Omega Blake this time around. That maybe the light's coming on. So who knows what there? But Omarion Brown. Just like a lot of guys the last 2 years, I never thought they did what they needed to do with him, which is chunk it down the field and let him run under it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the one time they did it, the Arkansas game last year, which is the one game they went downfield. I mean, they just didn't connect, but eventually it's going to connect. Hale, don't you think? I mean, seven times or seven. 7 touchdowns as a true freshman. So I don't know.
Yeah, there was whatever that disconnect was with the previous offensive coordinator, not to open up that can of worms, but for whatever reason, we didn't see a ton of Omarion Brown getting looks on deep balls. And when you got a guy who ran like 10.5 in the 100 in high school, seems logical enough. I know he's a little smaller and maybe has some limitations from a physical standpoint, but he can probably run by a handful of people. And I just
that's why I never understood like throwing him a screen pass where he stops, and then the safety just envelops him. And the chances of him, because a lot of screen passes, what you want is for your guy to make a miss, or they miss the tackle, or they break the tackle, and then you get a big gain. But I never understood that at all. But anyway. Long story short, that's crazy. So tight end, I think they'll be okay. They are a little thin at tight end, though, Hale. If, he said Knox was back, we should believe him. But if you did take Knox out of that equation, Reed McKeska also has been out for an extended period of time. Have you heard anything about Nick Elksness? Maybe how he's doing the Florida transfer? Because that would be kind of a guy that does a lot of different things.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that I've heard a lot. I've honestly heard more about Connor Cox over the course of the last 7-8 months compared to Elksness. Yeah, I think Elksness will be involved in some capacity, whether it's more of an attached guy on the line of scrimmage who's doing a lot of blocking, or if they're getting him involved in the passing game. I do know that they like what Connor Cox brings from that standpoint as well as a blocker, and think he could be a guy who could work the middle of the field, the seams. So beyond Simon and Knox, I would say that those are the top 2 guys. And I don't know if I'd even go so far as to say I'd give Elksness the edge over Cox just because he's older and been in college football a little longer. But I think those 2 guys are probably going to be pretty capable, complementary pieces within that tight end rotation behind, again, Simon and Knox.
Last night in the VIP room, JC listed a front 5 with Sidney Fugar as the starting right tackle. That's his opinion on what he believes will be rolled out on Saturday, September the 2nd. All this conversation we're having about the skill guys, we had a conversation yesterday with Pat DeMarco, as we do every Monday in our Talking Ball segment with him. And he said, well, none of it matters unless those guys up front get it right and get it together and they stay cohesive and they make things happen. So what have you heard on that front? Would you share an opinion, or would you share JC's opinion that maybe Sidney Fugar has at least leveled himself out for the starting job, if not taken it?
Yeah, I'd have to defer to JC on that since he was one who reported that. But Fugar was the very first day we were out at practice. 2 Fridays ago, whatever that date was. He was with the first group at right tackle, and he's a big, large human being, and he's been around since the spring, and he too has some previous college experience. So I would think it'd be a good thing if he can start out at right tackle and not have to be replaced by somebody else for whatever reason. That would be a nice development if he could just hold his own and give them a little bit of a foundation over there. Because I do feel like they're pretty solid inside, especially with Rashawn Lee and Gargiulo and maybe Trey Jones to an extent. It's just those tackles we're going to have to kind of see how that comes along. I mean, Ja'Kai Moore's played a lot over the years, and some of that's been inside, but I'm just going to kind of have to see how it goes against North Carolina in that first game. I mean, their defense hasn't been all that great the last year or two, but I think maybe some of that was a result of having a bunch of young guys playing up front. On their secondary was garbage as well, but had a bunch of young guys playing up front, and they're talented. Like there are a lot of these guys who are playing in that front seven for North Carolina who were offered and recruited by the previous head coach here at South Carolina. And say what you want about him, he was pretty good at evaluating front seven players. Just look at some of those defensive linemen who have been here at South Carolina in the past. So yeah, I think they're going to get tested pretty early on at that offensive tackle. South Carolina will.
What do you this is I don't want this to sound disparaging, but the time that I was able to spend along with JC around the large majority of this group of offensive linemen. I mean, heck, I think most all of them were at the Carolina Rise event. There was a noticeable difference, and I mean very noticeable difference in Tyson Wannamaker and Sidney Fugar. Hale, are you seeing that out there on the practice field as Wannamaker put some weight back on in the last few months? What are you seeing?
I think he's probably pretty close to where he was, maybe what you saw. I don't know what his number is, but yeah, if you saw one standing next to the other, it'd be pretty obvious who's the bigger fella. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to impact anything one way or another. Tyshawn, guys, he has the experience. I think you'd like to have that out there, but it almost, I think JC said this not long ago, it almost looked like he lost too much weight.
He's got to go want it again. I think Tyson Wannamaker is a really good player when he's kind of motivated to get out there and do it. I'm not saying he's not motivated right now. I don't know what's been going on with him at practice. I know he's not running or wasn't running with first team. It was inside. But I think he's one of those guys, he can be as good as he wants to be. How about that? Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. What else is on the docket, Hale? Anything else that has popped your attention over the last couple of days and that we will be – I think they're scrimmaging at night this week, so I'm pretty sure there won't be there's no post-game presser with Shane, right?
That's correct, yep. So today being Tuesday, for anybody who's listening on the podcast, today's Tuesday, so we'll have some interviews with offensive players this afternoon, and we'll do it again on Wednesday with the guys from the defensive side of the ball, and some media folks will get to go in on Thursday. I think in the morning they'll open up practice for 5, 6, 7 periods, however long it is, just a little bit to let us watch and see what we see and go from there. And that'll be it for the week. Like you said, JB, they scrimmage, I think at 7:30. I think they're trying to kind of replicate that kickoff in Charlotte.
Yep.
So yeah, no interview with Beamer afterwards. Don't have anything on Sunday. And I think Monday's off too. But I think next Tuesday, a week from today, I believe we'll be talking to the coordinators. It's either next Tuesday or Wednesday. So hopefully we can get some behind the scenes stuff, me and JC and Whittle and Tony, and have it for our members at the Big Spur. We try to do that this time of year, which obviously was the case with the VIP room last night and some of the other stuff on the site. So we'll certainly effort to do that again over over the weekend and early next week as we get closer to real football.
All right, 1 minute. Any thoughts on Braswell so far in camp? Carol Luca, I guess he used to cover him as a reporter, so I wanted to he's a good chat boxer. So, any thoughts on Braswell so far?
Yeah, I think Shane said he had a couple nice runs during the scrimmage this past Saturday, and I think they're pretty encouraged by what they've seen from him so far during camp. I mean, he's one of those guys who he ran track in high school and was a state champion in the 100 and 200 meter as a junior, and he's not just a track guy. Like he's a physical, tough runner, and I don't want to say he's primed to make a big impact as a freshman, but he certainly has the body type and some ability to play early. We'll see how much that plays out, but I feel like a broken record kind of saying that a few times here on the show today. But I think he's equipped to play and to be a good player sooner than later. I was a big fan of his coming out of high school. Again, you look at the track times, the production. I mean, his high school team wasn't very good, and he still found ways to put up some numbers and make some plays for that team. Washington County High School, I guess it is, in Sandersville, Georgia.
Waco.
Yeah, so I'm one of my guys who I was excited to see what he had to offer to this team, especially given the state of that position, that running back.
He's going to play. There's no doubt about that, and his time is coming soon, real soon, as a matter of fact. We are only about 18 days away from kickoff in Charlotte. Hale will let you run and grab a sandwich before you go back to covering South Carolina football. There's a great column up right now at the Big Spur, sizing up the position quarterback. Hale discusses the future and what is in place from a recruiting standpoint and coming down the pike. Maybe check that out. If you've got the Chief Sports app, you can minimize our screen and pull it up and check it out there. Hale McGranahan with the Big Spur. Talk to you next week, man. We're getting close. We're getting close to talking about actual games. I know you're excited like the rest of us.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, boys. Y'all be good.
There you go. Hale McGranahan again with BigSpur.com. Hell yeah, in the words of one Mad Dog Mullinax. Coming up at noon, it is Mike Morgan Power Hour, brought to you and proudly presented by Palmetto Medicare. And so we're looking forward to that. One thing we have not mentioned yet today is the news that popped yesterday earlier this morning from South Carolina women's basketball. Both Maryland and UConn will be welcome to Colonial Life Arena this year. Maryland, Sunday, November the 12th. UConn, Sunday, February the 11th. Tip times and TV information will be released at a later date. I think that UConn game has been sold out every time they played in Columbia. So I anticipate it will be again. And probably the Maryland game too. So
I'd be shocked if both weren't. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I mean, how many years is it that they've led the country? 7 years? 7 straight years they've led in attendance or something like that? 8 years?
It's a lot. And it's far and away. I mean, I don't think there's anybody close. When you look at number 2, it's thousands. I mean, it's like it's so strange that you can fill up the CLA for a women's game, but we just can't quite get there for the men. So let's
not
go.
Even halfway. Yeah, and those are like real numbers too.
That's not a fair comparison, I know, but it's the truth.
Yeah. I'll mention this real quick too before we head to a break because we got to quickly double before we get to Mike. Hale mentioned that after the scrimmage Saturday night, no Beamer, there will be no media on Sunday, and there will be no media on Monday either from the South Carolina coaching staff or its players. But on Tuesday, there will be a Shane Beamer press conference at 1:30. That's basically the first official Shane Beamer Tuesday presser of the year. They're on Tuesdays now at 1:30 p.m. And then on Wednesday next week, that is also the first Shane Beamer Carolina calls. They'll be on Thursdays during the season, basically starting the following week, heading into game week. But next week, it'll be a special on Wednesday at 6 p.m. at Backstreet's Grill in Columbia. So they'll take Sunday and Monday following this weekend scrimmage to kind of get some things planned out, leveled out, ironed out, and then they will begin to kick it into gear as far as their weekly media rotations, and that's what it's going to look like. All right, we will step aside. We are painted garnet and black by a couple of painters. LetMePaintSomething.com. If you or someone you know needs employment, and you live in Georgia or in South Carolina and you can paint, or maybe you can't paint but you want to be trained how to do it, LetMePaintSomething.com. Call this number, 803-522-6832. They pay well and they treat you well, and if you're a Carolina fan, you'll really enjoy it because that is a Gamecock-owned and operated company. Tristan and the Still family are absolutely wonderful, and they'll paint anything and everything all across the state of South Carolina and all across the Peach State to our west as well. Mike Morgan up next right here on Inside the Gamecocks, the show, part of the Chief Sports Network. Welcome home. That's what the Gamecocks say, and so does the Barn Dough Company, where they can build your dream home starting as low as $160 per square foot. If you live in the Carolinas, Georgia, or Tennessee, their turnkey process takes just 4 to 6 months on average and can be custom designed by size and details. Make your dream a reality. Visit thebarndominiumco.com. That's thebarndominiumco.com. The Barn Dough Company, Gamecock, owned and operated.
Welcome to TravelingCountryClub.com, your modern golf club experience. Hey folks, this is Michael Manus, former Gamecock golfer, inviting you to play more golf with a membership to TravelingCountryClub.com. With over 40 courses across the Carolinas, our membership provides you with an affordable way to enjoy a club-like golf experience. From the mountains to the coast, we offer golf courses that will challenge all types of golfers, no matter your handicap level or level of play. Plus, we offer unique membership benefits not seen anywhere else as part of Traveling Country Club. Tee it up with Traveling Country Club, TravelingCountryClub.com, TravelingCountryClub.com, proud partners of Inside the Gamecocks, the show.
Hey everybody, this is Mo Copper from Carolina Football. The show is painted garnet black every day by a couple of painters. Go to LetMePaintSomething.com to check them out. Go Cox.
10% off for military repeat customers or mention the show. Interior, exterior painting, fencing, cabinet staining, concrete painting, popcorn ceiling removal, and more. 803-522-6832. LetMePaintSomething.com.
Just as your State Farm agent combines good neighbor service with surprisingly great rates, you can combine your home, auto, life, or small business insurance with Tony Pope State Farm Insurance today. And guess what you'll get? That's right, even more good neighbor service with surprisingly great rates. In fact, Tony Pope State Farm is your go-to agent anywhere in South Carolina, North Carolina, or Georgia for the service you deserve at the price you want. So try combining your home, life, auto, and or small business insurance today. Tony Pope State Farm has been in business for more than 30 years and can handle anything you need in the tri-state area. Once again, Tony Pope State Farm will help you mix and match perfectly. Call 843-851-2222 or visit TonyPope.com today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Nana's Porch, nanasporch.com. At Nana's Porch, they cater weddings, parties, and all kinds of special events. Their meals are served buffet style. In seconds, they're encouraged. Plus, they can bring their mobile food unit to bring on-site and serve your guests as a unique alternative for your catering needs. Inquire about rentals as well. nanasporch.com. Find them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. 336-259-7550.
If you're on Medicare currently or approaching eligibility, it's time to enroll in a Medicare plan that meets your needs. Palmetto Medicare is here to help you through the process. Palmetto Medicare's owner, Brian Spencer, and his team of experts are here to assist you. Learn about the benefits and enroll in a plan that will cover as many of your medical costs as possible. Some of the advantages of Medicare health plans may include a variety of plan choices, increased benefits, lower premiums, and more. Give Palmetto Medicare a call to discuss your insurance and help get the exact coverage for your needs today.
Well, Galindo isn't he with the Longhorn Network?
There, if JC's referring to what I think he's referring to, well, I don't know if he is or he isn't, but so Lowell Galindo, yeah, he's with the Longhorn Network, the soon-to-be defunct Longhorn Network, and my first ESPN game was 2009. And it was at South Carolina, and it was on, I think, ESPNU. And Lowell was back in studio, and he kept calling me Michael Morgan, which is like, what my mom would call me when I'm in trouble. So that went on, and finally and it's my first game. I mean, I don't know who to tell or what to say, but it's Mike. It's not Michael, but no, it's not. I've never even met Lowell. I just remember he was like the guy that had the huge Windsor knot tie. I don't know if he still does that.
He was kind of on his way, and then went to the Longhorn Network, and I was reading an article about the demise of the Longhorn Network, and I look, and I forgot Lowell Galindo went to that network. I'd forgotten all about him. There's a blast from the past. So, oh well, sad days for them. Maybe we'll have a Lowell Galindo sighting again.
He's out there.
Longhorn Network.
He's out there.
No, I was just joking, man.
He's calling it. He's calling all the games this year for Texas on the Longhorn Network.
Yeah.
The ones that are on it,
which I think is one.
Is that it?
Yeah. Typically, every game is on either the ESPN network or the Fox networks, except for one.
Well, this party really died.
All right, moving on.
Tune into the Longhorn Network.
He's calling the games for the Longhorn Network. One game, guys. One game.
Well, yeah,
did we lock you in a dumpster? I got out. No.
Yeah, I mean, we could go into the whole birth of that network and
we don't.
What was behind it and all that good stuff. It's actually a pretty fascinating case study, but that's a story for another time. How you guys doing?
We're living the dream, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just sweating like the rest of us in the South.
Jeez, dude, I'm done. I'm done with it, man. I can't even let the dogs out. I mean, it sucks you dry out there.
I just got here.
Yeah, well,
I just got here.
Welcome.
I gotta head way after the show too. I got to drive down to Columbia.
I rolled through Atlanta before dawn today, Mike, and rode by your exit. I was like, well, if the car breaks down, I can always call Mike.
Yeah, I was going to say, how about a little drop in?
It was about 5 o'clock, so I was like, but when I turned my air conditioner down in the car, literally the humidity from outside would come in and make the rearview mirror foggy. There's not that kind of humidity in Chicago.
Well, that's the thing. That's what sucks right now about being on the coast. Like, I know it's hot in the Midlands. I know it's hot in the upstate and all these other places. But here's the thing: at night, at least it's getting down into the low 70s. Last night at 11 o'clock, it was 84 degrees. And you walked outside, and it's like somebody stuck a blowtorch in your ass. I mean, it was ridiculous. Pardon my French, but I mean, like you know, I was like, I'm tired of it, man.
Well, here's my thing on the weather. Look, we live in the South, and so from my standpoint, the winter is so much better than what it can be, as JC can attest, that I just don't complain about heat. I hate it like all of us. I don't like sweating when I walk to my car, and I don't. It's when I walk my dog, like you said. I mean, it's rough, but I know the alternative. I also know that it's not going to get any better. You can sell. This is just my theory. Don't anybody get too sensitive. You can sell 100,000 more electric cars, and we're still going to have a whole lot of heat in the summer in the South.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. That's
It
why.
happens. Yeah, I mean,
That's why let's just break the news, JC. The 1110 project at South Carolina, the Gamecocks are building a dome. They will be playing in a domed stadium soon that will only seat 20,000, and 15 of those 1,000 will be box seats.
With all the technology, this is what I've always wondered. I know we have retractable roof stadiums, but I would think about this every time there's a rain delay. Could we not just invent like a temporary roof that, like, I don't know, you can hit a button and it pops up, and then
shield.
And then shoot some, if nothing else, blocks the sunshine if it's too hot on a particular day, and avoids any rain, or for that matter, lightning delays. We have such technology. We can't do that. We can't get that done.
I'll bet they could.
Probably could.
I think it would just cost a bunch. It's like a force field.
Yeah.
You guys remember Super Friends?
Yeah, absolutely.
They made a force field, but there was a solar flare, and it ruined humanity. Superman was the last guy alive because he was stronger than everybody else, but everybody else was dead because it baked the whole Earth. And then some aliens came along and like gave Earth a second chance.
Oh, so
It's
pretty
in the-
much
it's in- yeah,
what
that's
some of
in
the
the-
media is telling us now.
I mean, yeah, it's in the Bible, guys. Come on.
That's right.
That movie was foreshadowing for 2023.
But Mike's
Did you
right.
read the book of Enoch?
There are some stadiums that do that. Like Major League Baseball's moved away from that to a certain extent. Like in Milwaukee now, they have a spaceship-looking. Used to be called Miller Park. It's called like American Family, blah blah blah, whatever now.
Probably need to go back to Miller now.
It's Miller time.
That would be a good time to go back to Miller.
It's Miller time. But I mean, it's just like this big futuristic thing where the roof came in and out, and then people they stopped wanting it. I think one thing in the SEC that you have to keep in mind too is as hot as it is down south, it's always been hot or whatever. With ESPN, and Mike knows this thing, and I'll let him talk about it. With ESPN losing inventory, i.e. the Big Ten, what do we normally see? We get up in the morning, we have our kegs and eggs, we go to brunch, we do whatever, we start tailgating. And normally, it's Iowa-Purdue. Game day, we're sitting right to West Lafayette for the Hawkeyes. And then you turn to ESPN2, Michigan State's already up 7-0 on Indiana. And then on Jefferson Pilot or SEC Network, you have your one SEC game. I think now, that's competing with the big noon kickoff at Fox.
The CW.
I think, of course, the Gilmore
Don't forget about the CW.
What if there's a Gilmore Girls Bowl?
Live after divorce court.
But a Wapner Bowl. There's a Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. Why can't there be a Gilmore Girls Bowl? I hope certain ACC teams get invited to that. Anyway, but you're going to see more SEC games kick off at noon. And during the warmer months, I don't know, man. I mean, I think the less of those, the better during the warmer months. But Mike, do you agree with me that
Absolutely.
because the inventory at ESPN, they don't have that Big Ten kickoff, and
that's right.
The Big Ten schools love kicking off at noon.
Been saying this forever. People are looking at this 10, 15 years ago. Like if you're not on 7 o'clock on ESPN, then your game doesn't quote matter to the network. That's not true. Mike, explain it.
Yeah, no, there's no. That's what Fox did. They saw the window.
That's right.
They said we can't compete with the nighttime windows, particularly like a really good SEC game. We're just going to take over 12 o'clock, and that's why you don't see Michigan, Ohio State at 7:30 because the numbers are astronomical at noon. You don't have to do that. You can just dominate. That's what their whole counter programming argument was. If you can't beat them, try something else. So we can't beat the other networks at night. Let's go ahead and try to dominate noon. But now what you're going to see with the other leagues, as JC mentioned, there's going to be more noon ACC games, Big 12 games, and of course SEC games. That's going to be where you don't have to watch because, I mean, we'll watch it because we're starved for football. So if high noon is Iowa, Illinois, you might get me for 15 minutes because I got no other options. You're not going to have to subject yourself to that anymore. That's not going to be the case. The 12 o'clock window is still very valuable. Is it as valuable as prime time? No, but at the end of the day, it's still about what ratings you draw. And if you look at some of those really good, the thing is that college football fans, if it's a really good game and they want to watch it, they will go out of their way to watch it. And so that's whether it's noon, 3:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30. They will find their way to get in front of their TVs and watch that game. So noon is still, people bag on noon. Noon is actually not a bad time slot at all anymore. Noon, there are very many weekends where a noon game will outdraw that 7 o'clock ESPN2 game that you think is prime time. And it is technically, but the noon game that week could be a better game that does better. Some of the best games last year were at noon. So we're no longer in the, if it's night, then it's truly a big deal. And if it's during 12, it's like a slap in the face. Those rules don't apply anymore. We're not watching Jefferson Pilot anymore with shoddy production. And everything now is pretty crisp. And if you're on noon, 3:30, and 7:30, the other thing is if you really are concerned about eyeballs, and as a fan of a particular program like the Gamecocks, you kind of should be, because the more eyeballs you get, the better it is for the program, right? It's kind of like what I always talk about the Carolina-Clemson rivalry. It's huge for everybody in the state of South Carolina, but it just gets buried sometimes with all the other big rivalry games going on. And if you're going up against Auburn, Alabama, it's tough to get a good rating and a good share. But like that Carolina-Tennessee game last year, it's not because it was at night that it did so well. What else was it? What was against it? Does anybody remember? I don't think there was a great game against
think there's
it.
Anything. That's why they were there.
That's right. That's right. Because on this, Carolina was just coming off a really bad loss against Florida. I don't know what the point spread was. I'm assuming Tennessee was a double-digit favorite.
104. Yeah.
They were not. That was not expected to be, the Gamecocks coming out party in a way, in an entertaining matchup, at least if you're a Gamecock fan. But sometimes things they don't follow the script. But you'd almost rather be on at noon against nothing or a crappy Big Ten game than be on in prime time against two games that are surely going to draw more viewers. That's just looking at it purely. The average fan doesn't care. Like, I always love the 3:30 game. That's my sweet spot. As a fan, as a broadcaster, as anything, 3:30 is not too early and it's not too late, and I still can do other things before the game and after the game. That's my sweet spot. But I realize for some people it might be different.
You're an Eastern time zone guy. That's why, Mike.
Well, sure, yeah.
And you're selfish Eastern time zone.
Yeah,
and even if I was in the Central time zone, it'd be 2:30. It's
2:30 is a little early. It's a little early, for me. I'm like, I don't know.
He's just getting out of bed at 2:30.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
To your point,
the noon kickoffs in Central are at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Well,
that's too early for me. And again, I've been behind the mic for some of those, and I'm just like, wow, we're about to kick this thing off at 11 a.m.
But whatever happened to those 9 o'clock kicks that they were
Pac-12? That was a Pac-12 genius.
That
idea.
was a Pac-12 thing, and now they'll just they'll play in your living room at the time it's most convenient if you want them to. They just need some audience.
Or they're the Pac-4.
Send them a time.
Let's just get time. You tell us when to be there. We'll play.
Feed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, to your point, Mike, South Carolina and North Carolina kicking at 7:30. The only real competition that evening is on NBC, which is Penn State and West Virginia. That'll be Todd Blackledge's first game as the color guy in Happy Valley,
who's outstanding, by the way.
Absolutely is outstanding.
Yeah, and yeah, that game is. I don't know what to make of West Virginia. I think Neil Brown's on borrowed time. But clearly the best game is the Battle of the Carolinas. I mean, that's why you play those games. Now, if you lose, it is just an absolute gut punch that's, as we learned a few years ago, sometimes you don't recover from. I mean, that was kind of the beginning of the end for Will Muschamp, was it not? But if you can win it and you can enjoy all that exposure and all the recruiting success that Shane Beamer and his staff are having right now. Those are the kind of games that go a long, long way in doing it. So I understand why you schedule it. It provides a lot more headaches and stress and everything else. But man, oh man, if you can pull it off, it's such a coup.
What are you? Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to mention South Carolina's lost one of those opening games in Charlotte. I think they're 3-1, including they're 1-1 against Tar Heels.
They won the one in 2015 too, when they were 3-9.
Yeah, and North Carolina won 9 games.
Sky Moore saved the day.
Division. So, they beat NC State. They got outgained by 300 yards that day.
Yep, but sure did. Old Debo.
And a wild one with one Lincoln Riley dialing up ball plays for East Carolina. They rallied from 17-0 down and beat ECU 56-37.
2011.
First one of these. This is the last one, though, for a long, long time. There's nothing scheduled in Charlotte.
The only other neutral they have scheduled is Virginia Tech and Atlanta in 2025. That's it. Over there in the backyard of one Mike Morgan.
I will be getting off on Mike's exit that Labor Day.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm going to stay at Mike's house, JC.
Save room from the hot tub.
Hey, all welcome at Mike's. Listen, yeah.
I'll get an RV and we'll just show up like Cousin Eddie and the kids. And Mike, if he's just let him finish.
Mike
knows the story about when South Carolina lost to North Carolina in the opener.
Oh God!
I had just started dating Nat, and we go, and I'm like, I got to keep.
Should you tell this story?
Yeah, and so we went to Dive Bar in Buckhead because we had the watch parties there, and I kind of promoted it for my friend Zach, and it was packed. We're watching the game and all that. And Carolina's up 20-9, and then they go 200-yard drives, and I'm like, they're going to lose this game to North Carolina. And I literally was explaining to Nat like why I was mad at Kirk Herbstreit. We were sitting in Mike's house and watching game day, and I was like, I can't believe Kirk Herbstreit picked North Carolina.
He did, didn't he? I forgot about that.
He did.
Yeah.
And so I had to leave with Nat because I was like, I'm not sitting around bitching with all the fans. I jump in an Uber, and we go to this great little establishment in Atlanta where the strippers go to retire. Have I mentioned this before? The retired strip club.
Should you be telling this publicly?
Is that really true? I didn't see any of that when I was there.
We talking about the right place?
Maybe
it was mostly dudes, and it was
wait.
Like just younger.
Are we talking about the same place, Mike? I don't know, man.
the one where you knew the owner, who's a big.
No, that's Dive Bar, dude.
What are you talking about?
I went to
man,
what's it called? Man, hold on. I'm gonna have to look
this is
it up.
getting work. Ken says Claremont Lounge.
Claremont Lounge. Claremont Lounge.
I forgot. You guys went. Yes.
It was so bad. I was like, I need to go to the one place that's just so messed up.
Yes.
That I could get my mind off of this for a little while.
That's right.
And so I took Nat to Claremont Lounge, and I said, "You'll get it's a strip club, but you'll get a kick out of it because it's the retired strip club."
Yeah, it's more of a joke than it is anything else. And it's one of those things like when I first moved to Atlanta, everybody's like, you got to do it at least once. You got to do it at least once. And I did it once, and it's definitely a one and done. Like I don't want to go back. It's a little bit frightening, honestly.
It is.
But it's like a gag gift. It's good for a while.
It is. Yeah. It's like a whoopee cushion or something.
Through college there, or have we graduated from?
No, they're putting herself into an assisted living home. Most of them.
That's right, getting the premier retirement.
They got to pay for the.
This is like the old timers game.
Award. Yeah, it is. It's like this. It's like the Legends tour, but they only take cash, which I think is good, and they sell canned beer. And so I took her there, and she got a kick out of it, and we laughed, and finally came back and actually watched some football with Mike. We watched Missouri lose to Wyoming. It's before I met JB, but I'm sure JB remembers that game, don't you? When Missouri lost to Wyoming in the opener.
I remember it well. I picked that game. I picked Wyoming to win that game, as a matter of fact. Remember it very well. Yeah, again, on the advice of my father-in-law.
That Tar Heel game, nobody knew Sam Howell.
No.
I mean, maybe in recruiting, JC knew him, but nobody knew how good Sam Howell was. That was his coming out party.
He's a true freshman, first start.
Yeah, and like I don't know, JC, how many stars he had next to his name coming out of high school, but I knew next to nothing about him. He's a 5-star. Or is that you're just coughing?
Sorry, yeah, no, late blooming.
It's okay.
Late blooming 5. He was a 4 for a long time, but he went to the Army Bowl and like went off, and they moved him to 5. He was committed to Jimbo Fisher and Willie Taggart.
Florida State, right?
He was committed to Willie Taggart.
Yeah, he was going to FSU.
Smoking Willie. And Mac had just gotten to North Carolina, and Mac flipped him. And then they played the Gamecocks. And what a lot of people don't remember about that North Carolina team, though, is they did have Sam Howell, but they had 2 really, really good running backs, Shante Williams and Michael Smith, that were just like 2- and 3-star kids from North Carolina, and they both were like really, really good. And they ran all over the Gamecocks, wore them out. Carolina lost. Jake Bentley got hurt, and the rest is history.
And
but
that was Jake Bentley as we knew him.
I'll never forget going to the Claremont Lounge after that game because I was just so distraught, and I didn't want to show my butt in front of my new girlfriend.
I see someone typing in, I think Sam is just as good as Drake. As a college quarterback, maybe. Now, Howell was at one time projected to be a first-rounder, and then he dropped like significantly to like a 4th or 5th round pick, and he's got a chance to win the job in Washington. But he doesn't have the arm that Drake May does. I tell you that. Drake May he's a different skill set, different skill set altogether. And again, he'll be a top 5 pick, not just a first rounder.
Mike, we need to step aside for a timeout. When we return, though, on the topic of quarterbacks, a couple of elite QB matchups now not far away, and it's close enough where we can kind of start comparing the two. Want to gauge your excitement in both of those ball games, North Carolina versus the real Carolina, at least on this show, and then LSU and Florida State following up on Sunday night. Also, Alshon Jeffrey, his jersey is being retired in Columbia, and wanted to get your thoughts and opinions not only on that, but the future. This program has been really enhanced under the leadership of Coach Tanner and trying to acknowledge the greatest athletes to ever play at the University of South Carolina in their respective sports. And something interesting came up earlier about honoring Steve Spurrier. I kind of mentioned it, and at some point in time, the time is right. I mean, he's the one that created expectations in South Carolina. There were none prior to him getting here, and wanted to get your thoughts on that as well. So we got a boatload to get Mike Morgan's opinion on here in Power Hour on Inside the Gamecocks, the show. Hang tight. We are built by the Barn Co., and this hour is proudly presented by Palmetto Medicare, 803-960-9484. We'll be right back.
Brian Spencer.
Hey, everybody. This is Mo Copper from Carolina Football. The show is painted garnet black every day by a couple of painters. Go to letmepaintsomething.com to check them out. Go Cox.
10% off for military repeat customers or mention the show. Interior, exterior painting, fencing, cabinet staining, concrete painting, popcorn ceiling removal, and more. 803-522-6832. Letmepaintsomething.com.
If you're in the upstate of South Carolina and are in need of residential real estate services, Cindy Bass Searfoss of Caldwell Banker Kane is for you. Ask her about the Village at Creekside, all of her listings. In my hometown of Spartanburg, South Carolina, right there on Daniel Morgan Avenue, married to a lifelong Gamecock fan, and many of our listeners have already bought homes from her and been 100% satisfied with the detail and care she uses. Cindy Searfoss, 864-414-5271, Caldwell Banker Kane in the upstate for your real estate needs.
Building your dream home is often just that, a dream, and sometimes a nightmare. But at the Barn Company, they commit to quality and build without sacrifice. Customization, open floor plans, limitless flooring options, maintenance-free and easy installation perks, and affordability are just a few reasons why they've been named one of the best builders in the U.S. Believe in your dreams. Visit thebarndominiumco.com. That's thebarndominiumco.com. The Barn Company. Gamecock owned, Gamecock operated. The preferred sign partner of Gamecock Athletics is Signorama Columbia, and they should be yours too. A full-service sign company that handles design, production, install, and service, Signorama Columbia has helped to bring to life the perfect vision for so many all across South Carolina. Owned and operated by proud Gamecock alumni, they can handle all types of signage, including interior and exterior, vehicle graphics, and more. Go to Signorama.com and find the West Columbia location, or call them at 803-407-9284. Bring your brand to life with Signorama Columbia, and go Gamecocks. Guy is back from yesterday. So,
we got
this is where this is Bake. JC, allow Phil and I to introduce you to the gentleman who's supposed to be earning us some commission. We got you a new Big Spur member yesterday with this guy, and he also wants to donate to Carolina Rise. We won't take commission on that. We've heard what happens over the last few weeks.
Yeah, y'all seem to frown upon that.
I thought it was pronounced Baquet.
Well, maybe it's Mr. Baquet. Who knows? He might be French. I don't know, but he's at least here with us. And yesterday we gave him our pitch. I think Phil's was a little bit better than mine. And then we had Whittle give him a pitch. He asked, should he join, another site, or should he join the Big Spur? And so after the pitches, he signed up, and so we'd like what did we settle on, Phil? 40% of monthly?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
40% would be great. And we really appreciate that. Mike Morgan here, or Billy Hoyle. As a matter of fact, we got Billy Hoyle in today till 1:00. Mike, before I jump you back in here, I want to make sure I mention this so collectively we all don't forget about it. And I know going into break, I said what we were going to talk about, but I did see on the X machine, I guess that's what we call it now, during while we were away, that they have already announced the big noon kickoff for Saturday, September the 30th. That's the 5th week of the season. So, okay, hats off to NBC and those guys for getting that far in advance. By the way, the game that they announced is Michigan at Nebraska on September the 30th. So JC and Phil's good buddy, Coach Satterfield, will be calling games against the Wolverines in that one. Now, I decided, well, let me go take a look at week 5 and see why they chose this game. And I didn't have to get very far to realize that, let's say the preseason rankings all kind of unfold the way that they think they're going to, at least in the top 10. Check this out, boys and girls. Numbers 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10 are all on the road in week 5. That's when chaos happens. So that's it. I've circled it. Week 5, someone's going to get beat, probably 2 or 3, and it'll turn the college football world upside down. All right, Mike, I'm done. Sorry.
And half those teams you mentioned will no longer be in the top 10 before that game.
Probably not. Well, I will say
these polls mean nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Actually, so let me read them to you. 1 Georgia, 2 Michigan, 4 Bama, 5 LSU, 6 Southern Cal, 7 Penn State, 9 Clemson, and 10 Washington. I think most of them will still be in the top 10 by then.
Most of them, yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if 3 of them are out. Now, that's without looking at the schedules, obviously, and seeing do they play anybody worth a damn during the first few weeks of the month of September and into October. I don't know that, but we do this to ourselves every year, and we set ourselves up to be stunned that an upset happens in college football, and they always do. Always. So again, to me, I don't know if we had this conversation, but there's like a handful, maybe you could stretch it out to 6 or 7 teams that I truly believe have a chance of winning it all. That's it. The other 130 are playing for other stakes, and it's okay.
You know, 130.
If you're living your life where it's a national title or bust, you're going to live a very sad life because that's not the reality that most programs live in. But there's only about a handful that I think truly have a chance. You know, TCU was that's the biggest Cinderella story we've had in college football in a long, long time. They're almost like BYU, but we didn't have a playoff format when BYU won their very generous title. But yeah, there's a few at the top. And after that, like, I don't think there's a huge difference between the 8th best team in the country and the 18th. The 18th best team in the country and the 35th. The 35th best team in the country and the 55th. I just don't think, like, once you get past that elite group that is so utterly talented and deep, I don't think there's major upsets that truly happen. The point spreads might say otherwise, but so much of that is going on rankings and perception. But in terms of talent, 1 through 85, I don't think there's as big a difference as we might think there is.
Speaking of talent, Brian Spencer and Palmetto Medicare sure do have it, and they are very talented at what they do in keeping South Carolina healthy.
They are, and I know a lot of people, when they tune into Inside the Gamecock show, they can only hear it, so I'll mention it even though it's on your screen. The phone number is 803-960-9484, palmetto-medicare.com. Brian Spencer, again, doesn't excel at much, but he has produced one hell of a business since 2005. Local, specific, and native to the Palmetto State. Any and all plans in South Carolina available through Palmetto Medicare, free annual Medicare and prescription reviews, and a $25 donation to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital or any charity of your choice with every enrollment. You need somebody to help you through the process. I can't think of anybody better to do that than Brian Spencer of Palmetto Medicare. Again, this is more than just a business for him. It's been a passion for a long, long time. And if you or somebody you know is near the age of 65, you need somebody to help you through the process, cover as much Medicare cost as possible. 803-960-9484. Tell them you heard about it right here on the Power Hour on Inside the Gamecocks.
He chimed in last week in the message in the Nana Sports chat box. I wouldn't go as far as Mike does in offending his appearance because he seemed like he was ready to come through the screen and
get
into
no.
a
Truth be
tussle.
told, he could kill all of us with his bare hands.
Oh.
He's like John Rambo. He's got that about him, but he doesn't carry himself that way.
No.
Truth be told, the guy, you don't want to go in his
You had to.
backyard. He
he's
filled in his pool for a reason. Yeah,
that's right.
I get it, but he'll keep you alive. That's for sure.
That sounds like a good afternoon movie, Rambo. Like
I bet there will be another Rambo.
Or First Blood.
I'm all about First Blood.
With Brian Dennehy.
Yes. Now we're dipping into 5 and dime territory.
Careful. That's only for JC and Morgan.
I've been up since an astronomically early hour, and I'm like, afternoon naps coming. So
you're craving the 5 and dimes.
I'm craving the like a movie. If I fall asleep, I'm not worried about it. Right. I don't.
By the way, if the whole controversy, and we are going to talk about this. We'll also have Phil Steele on JC and Morgan on Thursday. So email us your questions now at 10:30. At 10:30 a.m. We'll be live from 9:15 on, but 10:30 I think is when Phil comes on. You can email the questions. Go to jcandmorgan.com, go to the mailbox. But this whole controversy with The Blind Side, I know I'm in the minority.
JC, everything good?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody mention The Blind Side?
Yeah, your phone was yelling at us while you.
Oh yeah, because since 2005, I've told everybody that would listen, there's something very shady about that whole situation.
Well, first off, I never liked the movie, and I don't care who thinks I'm crazy. I never liked the movie. It was so hokey and so unbelievable to me. Like, it was a clear sports movie. Hollywood got a hold of it and turned it into this sweet thingamajig, whatever. I don't know the Tuohys, but when I was doing Gamecock games and we would go to Ole Miss, Sean Toohey was the radio analyst for Ole Miss basketball. So I've had conversations with him. He also did Memphis Grizzlies radio, I believe, for a while. He was always a good guy to me. I never heard a bad word about him. The whole notion that this whole thing was a big scam, I don't know, don't have inside information, but I'll tell you this. The Tuohys are loaded. Like, that's all I knew about that family. I knew about Sean Toohey playing basketball at Ole Miss. I knew his wife was a bit of a firecracker, although probably completely overly exaggerated by Sandra Bullock, who won an Oscar for that performance.
Yeah. She was my favorite part, though.
Well, yeah, I got you. If you want peak Sandra Bullock, you
Like,
need
kind
to
of
watch
the
Time to Kill.
MILF. Yeah, of course, watch Time to Kill.
But
I'll never forgive Matthew McConaughey. Well, although he had Ashley Judd at home.
Yeah, I was going to say
decisions.
It's
All
a tough call.
All right.
Again,
man.
in the real world,
Max
Matthew gives in, and
Max is dead. You're next.
it's Oliver Platt. Who, if anybody could play Oliver Platt in a movie, it's definitely J.C. Sherbert. I think we can all agree on that. But just if the Tuohys have as much money as I was told that they did, does he really need to like scam a high school prospect? And then I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. The whole thing is just weird and quirky, and I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of it. But I never liked the movie. Was my initial point.
I'll tell you this. Well, it was candy-assed. Honest to God,
Yes.
I live this. Let me just tell you this right now. I'm taking you back to Rivals.com. A young man named J.C. Sherbert. Another young man named Chris Childers, who we all know from Sirius XM Radio. And another young man named Greg Lackey, who had a nice career, a Notre Dame grad. We were all new, and they sent us to Memphis to cover the Michael Orr press conference. Right? It's my first press conference covering recruiting at Rivals. And, oh, God, is he going to go to Tennessee? Oh, Tennessee Vols in the office were like, I'm sure Coach Fulmer will get him. I'm sure he will. And then Coach O had just gotten to Ole Miss, and that kind of gave them renewed hope because Coach O would, I'm going to recruit really well. They didn't, Cutcliffe was out or whatever. And I walked in there, and I was like, you people are full of crap as a Christmas turkey. There's nothing on the wall in here but Ole Miss basketball pictures. It was at Sean Toohey's headquarters. And all the awards his 27 Taco Bells in the greater Memphis area had won. Now, people are like, oh, Taco Bell. Oh, yeah. You know how much money you can make if you own 27 Taco Bells? You're loaded. And they did sell it for $200 million. So the crock was not what they did for Michael Orr. The crock was he was never going anywhere but Ole Miss. Never.
Because of Coach O.
No question. And that was the dirty lie. You trotted old Lou Holtz in there. You trotted Nick Saban in there. Oh, funny. We think we're getting Michael Orr. Poor Philip Fulmer, who actually did lose him. Phil thought he'd get anybody. But, that was, to me, that was the lie. That's why I don't watch Last Chance U. Because I've lived all this. And I'm like, it's just not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not realistic. And so, although there is a junior college in Yuma, Arizona, that's a lot like
I still
West
think
CSU.
you would love that show. It bothers me that JC has not watched this show.
But I'll never forget it. Everybody's like, oh, the Tuohys, they just love Michael. And, and I'm like, you guys are naive as you know what? This guy's the top tackle in the country. They were 4-7 last year and fired David Cutcliffe. They're serious and hired the recruiter from Southern Cal. And they're not going to let this kid leave.
But that's the bigger point.
That's the biggest point, I thought. I thought that was the scam.
I'm with you. Like, that makes sense. Like, if you want to say the Tuohys were all about just getting the top player at their alma mater, the school they love and breathe, I can buy that. If you want to tell me how much money did you say they're worth, JC?
$200 million.
Over $200 million. That they needed to scam this kid to make a percentage, or even let's just say his entire, if this is like the Britney Spears situation, a bunch of his NFL money and whatever on the movie, which Michael Orr claims he didn't get any money off of that. Are you really going to go through all that trouble when you don't need the money? That's the part that I just don't know.
I don't think the Tui said they didn't make any money off of it either.
I don't think. Well, I've heard that, and I've also heard that it was split among five different ways, whatever that means.
See, I don't think the kid, the brother, I don't think they deserved any money.
Yeah, no.
So they probably the Tui should have given all that money to Michael Orr, but I don't think it's enough money to shake a stick at. So if I'm Sean Tui and Leanne, and her name, what was her name? Leanne? What's her name? Leanne.
Yeah.
I'm just writing Michael Orr a check and saying, shut up.
Yeah.
Stop talking. Stop embarrassing the family. But that makes it even more shady because they're kind of out there brushing back against it now. It kind of reminds me of those, they're in jail now. The Chrisleys. You remember the Chrisleys, the reality show? That's what this kind of reminds me of. Chrisley Knows Best, and they're in jail for tax evasion now. I don't know. It was this garbage.
So was Mike the Situation from Jersey Shore.
It was this garbage. It was a garbage reality show, but it has reality show-esque feel to it now. That
the whole thing's crazy.
Yeah,
the whole. There's going to be a 30 for 30 potentially on that. I just watched the Manziel 30 for 30, which I know
it's phenomenal.
It was good, Jamie. But here's the thing: I didn't learn much. And I thought they rushed through it. Like, I thought it was like somebody said, hey, can't be more than an hour. And I'm like, there's more to this story than an hour to me. Fair. You throw in commercial breaks. I wanted more. There's one coming out on the Urban Meyer Florida teams. I forgot the name of it. That's coming out next week.
That's out. Or I thought that was out already.
Oh, is it out already?
It's on Netflix. Yeah.
That's already on Netflix.
Urban Meyer's already out?
All in on that. I thought it was next week, but regardless.
It may be. I may be mistaken.
I
that's thought it was on Netflix already.
You can't rush through that story. I mean, I watched a 4-part series on Aaron Hernandez alone. You can't rush through that story. And they're saying, I think 40 of the players were arrested at one time or another. And of course, my question will be well, what were they arrested for? Because players being arrested, I hate to say this, in big-time college athletics, that ain't nothing new. Like I mean, I'm in Atlanta, not too far away from Athens, and there's been a lot of stuff going there. But guys were arrested for speeding, which is not when you're going 120 on a 45-mile-an-hour road. That's nothing to sneeze at. But it is different than, say, beating up a woman. Anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole. I did want to get to
a week away, Mike. A week away.
A week away. On Netflix.
It is a week away.
Okay, so I'm in on that. I watched the Manziel one, which again, I wanted a little bit more meat on the bone there, but it is interesting because I remember, I was on the road somewhere, finishing up calling game and watching him put on that display at Alabama, and it was like, holy smokes! Yeah. And then I was the next year. I had an assignment. This was one of the weirdest things I ever did. They said, Mike, can you go to – now, CBS had the game. I'm hearing something. Is that JC? Is that you with the mouse? Okay.
Does that mean?
Yeah,
that would be
it's always you.
Yes. We got to order JC a microphone here.
Yeah.
but so the next year, 2014, I'm there in College Station, and our assignment was to broadcast Yell Night, which is the big pep rally at midnight the night before the game. Yeah. So we're sitting there in director's chairs on Kyle Field, and I'm watching all this, and I had never been to a Texas A&M game in my life. They were just new to the SEC. It's unbelievable. It's pretty. I mean, no matter what you think of Texas A&M, underachiever, this, that, and the other, what they do with their whole setup is phenomenal. But then watched Manziel in person, and yeah, they didn't win the game, but Manziel was an incredible college player. And if he wasn't such a knucklehead, you can't tell me in today's NFL he couldn't have had something going on. But he just. But the other, and what got me thinking about that was the other lie. We were just talking about all the lies regarding the Tuies and Michael Orr, and was that Johnny Manziel, the reason he had all that money, because clearly he was getting paid, was that he comes from oil money. His family is rich. Well, that's all a lie. His family is not loaded. They're not wealthy at all. but that's what was said to provide some cover for kind of the lifestyle he was living. And he was living pretty large even as a college kid. So that was one of those things I thought was pretty interesting. And they didn't even delve much into that in the doc.
Yeah, well, and I guess this Manziel and his buddy, are they just still not talking? Is it done, or
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
You talking about the guy that served as his agent?
Right. And I guess that's kind of what you were getting, because I thought it was phenomenal, but you do bring up a good point. And the fact that I felt like there's a lot of, I mean, maybe there's just no resolution to it. There's nothing else to say, but it just felt very, now that I think back, there was a lot of things in that documentary that I never got any closure on. You didn't really know.
Well, that's the thing. They just left it all. Like, I was waiting for a second part. I'm pushing my remote and I'm like, where's the second part of this series?
Yeah.
Because that Untold series is really good. Like Manti Te'o had a 2-parter. Tim Donaghy had a 2-parter. And I'm like, where's part 2? I'm missing part 2. Are they going to make us wait another week for part 2? What? There is no part 2. Like, what? What is that? They just, it's like they ran out of budget and said, we got to cut it short. It'd be like Jaws, except you don't have the final scene where he eats Quint. Like, you just, no, we got to cut production. They want us to turn, but there's no closure. That they got 3 guys on the boat and the shark's still alive. Yeah, I know, but just end the movie now. That's what I felt like at the end of the Manziel one. What an anticlimactic. Hey, I do want to get into the names. I was watching some of your first hour because I'm not just a guest. I'm also a fan of the Inside the Gamecock show. You guys do great work. And I all the athletes you were talking about, these are all guys I covered and have a lot of thoughts and so many memories of. So I don't know what kind of time we have or what, but
let's hit our timeout, and when we return, we'll give you the floor and you take it from there.
I'll take that floor.
So we make sure that we can pay the bills around here. Hang tight. We're powered by Electric Bikes of Charleston, 28 miles per hour, up to 60 miles. You can drink a whole 12-pack while you're doing it. ElectricBikesCharleston.com. They come from all over the state of South Carolina. And thanks so much to Michelle Wilkins and her team. They're in the low country. ElectricBikesCharleston.com. We'll be right back.
Golfers and wannabe golfers, former Gamecock golfer Meredith Taylor is now a full-time golf instructor in the Midlands of South Carolina. In-person golf lessons are held at the Country Club of Lexington. Half-hour, on course 9 or 18 holes. And if you're outside of South Carolina, Meredith conducts virtual lessons. Just send in your golf swing for analysis. Gift cards are available for in-person 1-hour lessons. Connect on Twitter @MareTaylor and find her online at McKellarEnterprises.org. Her email is on the website. Schedule your next lesson today with Meredith Taylor, former Gamecock golfer. Electric Bikes of Charleston offers the most fun you'll ever have on 2 wheels. Magnum, Velotric, Aventon bikes, and more. And they sell to consumers all across the state and offer outstanding warranties and service after the sale. 5 levels of pedal assist plus a throttle help you handle the southern heat better, but still get great exercise. Bikes are available all ages and sizes. ElectricBikesCharleston.com or stop into their store in Mount Pleasant. Electric Bikes of Charleston, powering Inside the Gamecocks, the show.
Bikes are Charleston! Electric Bikes of Charleston! Electric Bikes of Charleston! Electric Bikes of Charleston! Bikes of Charleston!
All right, final segment on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back inside the Gamecocks, the show built by the Barn Co. and always live from the Sinorama Studios. Special thanks to Matt Vaughn and his team at Sinorama in West Columbia. Mike, you mentioned just a little while ago when we were fussing and discussing Alshon Jeffrey being named now to the next, or being named the next Gamecock who will have his jersey retired, which will put it up on the press box in Williams-Brice Stadium.
How many have been retired? Do we know?
Well, technically just 2 on the football side because the other one were jersey numbers, but I guess they unretired those. So when you include it, you got who do you have? You got Sterling,
George Rogers,
George Wadiak, and
Johnson. Somebody named Johnson.
And
and then Clowney.
Sterling's will never be the numbers like Sterling Sharp's number will never be worn again. I think George's is off the table too, but they don't retire numbers anymore.
Mike Johnson
retire jerseys. Yeah,
Mike Johnson. Sorry.
And so Clowney was like the 5th one, and now Alshon's 6th.
They're just doing jerseys now, though.
Yeah. Well, because eventually you run out of numbers, and you don't want to lose out on a recruit because you can't give them a number. Like that's, I mean, seriously, like that's a little bit.
It's
like you got a 5-star who desperately wants to play for your program. Nope, we retired the number. Would you rather wear 17? No, I'm going elsewhere. Like you don't want that to happen. Alshon, of course. I mean, that was my last year in Columbia when Alshon was committed to Southern Cal, right? And then Lane made the infamous when he went switched to South Carolina, and Lane made the infamous, well, he'll be pumping gas. And I remember the radio station that JC and I were at printed T-shirts about Alshon, pumping gas, and kind of making fun of Lane on all that. But that was that was a more immature Lane. Now he's subdued a bit. But no, I mean, Alshon to me was such a huge part. If we're talking about that glory stretch where the program reached new heights, the thing I loved about Alshon's game too is that he wasn't out there. He wasn't a showboat at all. He wasn't getting into trash talk. He wasn't doing crazy stuff every time he caught a pass for a first down. He was all business. And he won, it seemed like, every 50-50 ball that was ever thrown his way. He was never the fastest guy, but man, you trusted him at a big spot to make a big grab. So no doubt it's deserved for him.
Who's next?
What other? Well, you mentioned Clowney. You mentioned Clowney, but he's already. Who's next of that group? I mean, there's just.
I think it's Stephon Gilmore. I think he's going to be the next one whose name they call.
Well, I caught like half of your conversation. I'm with JC. Like you could argue the most important of them all was Lattimore.
Sure.
I don't know. Without Lattimore, that's what. And I remember hearing. I ran into when they just opened up that Ruth's Chris, which if you were living in Columbia and you didn't have a good steakhouse, that was like, hallelujah, we got a Ruth's Chris here. Yep. Thankfully, the restaurant scene has improved a lot in Columbia. You guys in Charleston and Greenville, you already were like a million miles ahead of us in restaurant selections. I used to make jokes that like we led the nation in per capita mediocre wing joints. Like nobody was going to top us in that. But if you wanted like great Italian food, great steakhouse, we were lagging behind the other South Carolina.
I disagree with that. Back in the day, Carolina wings was good. Back in the day,
I'm not saying there weren't any good wings.
Yeah.
I love D's wings, which
D's
I think is still
and
there.
Casey.
D's and Casey. My man Billy Rent.
Original Casey.
He was the owner. They were. I used to go there once or twice a week. You get the wings and you'd get the buffalo chips. Semi-floppy, put the vinegar on it. I mean, that was gold. But I think
I may go there today.
What's that?
I might go there today.
I think they moved, JC. I think you better check before you go there. I don't think they're in Parkland Plaza in Casey anymore. But
I'll give you a free wing spot today. Vella's in West Columbia. They have killer wings as well.
Oh, I used to go to Bella's. Was a proud sponsor of the Chiefs.
Such a hole in the wall. Love
I've been around in a while, man.
Bella's is good. No, that's the thing. Like, I'm not saying there weren't good wing places in Columbia, but there were also several that were mediocre, and it was like on every street corner, there's 3 of them, and you can't find anything else to eat other than fast food. Like, again, now you've got halls. You've got some really good options that you didn't have when I was there for much of my time. But no, I remember sitting at Ruth's Chris and what's his name? John Reeves.
Was it David Reeves?
David Reeves. John's his father.
Yeah.
David and his girlfriend, whoever, were there, and they came over, and we just started talking, and I was like, "What's the latest on Lattimore?" And he's just like, "Mike, if we get him, game changer, man. He is." I said, "Is he that good?" Because there was also, is it the offense, and there's been a lot of hyped up running backs that weren't necessarily true game changers. And he's like, no, this guy's different. And he was right. I mean, the Lattimore signing and the Lattimore performances that are just legendary now, I think that's the next guy.
Well, I would agree with you wholeheartedly, because it has nothing to do with what Lattimore did on the field and what he did for the university. I don't think that Marcus is ready for that.
Yeah, and I know
I'll just leave that there.
I semi know what you're talking about, and I don't know Marcus. I don't know that whole story, so I'm just going purely on career.
Sure.
And
yeah, like who you would choose. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I get it.
He was so, like, I don't think you have that run, even if you had everybody else, Clowney, Gilmore, Jeffrey. I don't think you have that run without Marcus Lattimore.
Well, no, South in 2009, the Gamecocks were a competitive team. I mean, they played Tebow at Florida pretty well. They beat Clemson and that C.J. Spiller team that won the ACC Atlantic.
But it changed when he walked on campus. It changed in that Georgia game.
The next year, they won the East, and then 11-2, and then probably the best team
that Georgia game
was that 2012 game.
The 2010 Georgia game is what changed it all.
Yeah, he killed. Yeah, I mean, I remember what's his name. Why am I blanking, Mike? We had him on our show. Big Georgia guy, used to be on right for the AJC. What's his name?
Seth Emerson or Jeff Dantzler?
No, older guy. Legendary.
Oh, guy. Tony Barnhart.
Tony Barnhart. Yeah. I remember Tony Barnhart's column said, "I've seen Herschel Walker, ... Now I've seen Marcus Lattimore." That was how.
Yeah.
Because Herschel was really good as a freshman, too. And he tore the dogs up every time he played them, too. I mean,
tore the dogs up, tore Florida up in that one game that kind of signified a passing of that was the end of Urban Meyer's run in Gainesville.
40 carries in that game. 40.
Yeah. 40 carries. I mean, how often do you see a college back at 40 carries anymore? It's almost unheard of. And he got better as the game went along. He didn't get tired. And it's like the mark to me of a really good back is when everybody in the stadium knows you're getting the rock 30, 40 times and they still can't stop it. We don't have much of that anymore. And so much now is based on deception, misdirection, draw plays. That's kind of that's not what and if you go back, yes, Spurrier ran the ball at Florida with guys like Eric Rett and Fred Taylor, but it was a different type of deal. It really was pass to set up the run. It was a bunch of draws, and he was about 50-50 run pass now, but it was really pass set up the run. When Lattimore was doing his thing for Spurrier, Carolina, it was truly run to set up the occasional pass. It was not like everybody knew, okay, it's first down, probably a Lattimore run. It's third and short, probably a Lattimore run. It's fourth quarter, protecting a lead, definitely a Lattimore run. That's what it was. Steve completely transformed the way he called plays at Carolina, and he was able to do that in large part because he had a bell cow generational running back at Marcus Lattimore.
And here's the thing. Spurrier, if you look at his career at South Carolina, coaching against Florida, they ran the ball a lot. That first game in 2005 that he won with Blake Mitchell and those guys, he threw 17 passes, completed 7.
Right.
I think he figured out, I think in his mind of Spurrier real quick, 30 seconds. Whenever the Gators got beat when I was the coach, teams just lined up and ran it up our ass. Let's just run it up their ass, And they said in practice that week, Marcus, you ready to carry it about 35, 40 times Saturday night down at the swamp? All right, let's do it.
Yeah, it made sense. You didn't have Jesse Palmer and Danny Werfel throwing the pill either. You had Blake Mitchell and
in that case, you had Steven though.
They had Steven Garcia that year and Alshon, but Steven had some beautiful passes in clutch situations. It's just why would you not give it to Marcus Lattimore? I mean, Florida returned the opening kick for a touchdown, and then it was pretty clear by I was at that game. Pretty clear by the third quarter. They weren't going to stop Carolina, and John Brantley and that bunch, they weren't going to move it against that defense either. So,
but
and
anyway,
Carolina went to Atlanta. So
went to Atlanta. But you mentioned so many names, guys. I was sitting there and I was like in a time machine. And of course, I'm with you. Gilmore was I remember we did a live remote show when that recruiting class was announced. We did a remote over by the stadium, and Gilmore was very, like, everybody knew that was a huge get. Of course, he went on to outstanding NFL career. You want to start talking about who had the best career at the next level?
Well, and that's why I say that. I mean, you look at, Clowney, Jeffrey. I mean, the trend is kind of there as to where they're going with this. I think it'll be Stephon.
Yeah. I mean, the Clowney thing. All right, can we just? Are we all friends here? Can we just say this? And yes, I'm with you. Rashad Faison was awesome.
Oh, he was one of my favorites.
Yeah,
he'd knock you in the next week.
Clowney was I started hearing about Jadeveon Clowney. My boss with the Carolina Panthers, when I was doing the preseason games, he was also an announcer for high school football in Rock Hill. So I was hearing about all these Rock Hill kids before they ever signed. And he was saying, Mike, wait till you see this one. He's like, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. And he watched Rock Hill football for about 30 years. And I said, well, what? He goes, well, they call him doo-doo. Have you guys heard why they called him doo-doo?
No. Well, I heard they did, but I didn't know that.
They called him doo-doo because he made offensive linemen look like that's why they called him doo-doo. So I started hearing about him and then I knew, like, okay, they got to get him. Whatever it takes, they got to get Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney, and of course everybody knows the Michigan hit, and honestly it was impressive, but like it's an unblocked guy knocking a tailback with his helmet off. Like, that wasn't the best play of the Jadeveon Clowney. Like, he had more significant plays in his career at Carolina. That was huge, but
Georgia game in 2012.
The Clemson game is what he'll always truly be remembered.
Yeah. But unfortunately for the national, like, the people that don't necessarily know anything about Gamecock football, that's the signature moment of Jadeveon Clowney.
It is a moment, though.
Oh, it's a great moment.
It's one of those
head fell off.
Talked about plays in college football. When there's a top 100 list of all-time plays, it'll be
like number one.
Yeah.
But
here's the thing: all don't lie plays ever, too. In
the Georgia game that year, he jumped over a tackle.
Yeah,
Aaron Murray got the ball off. Who, by the way, we had on the podcast, JC and Morgan, a while back.
Yeah,
Aaron got the ball off, but Clowney jumps over one of those big tackles for Georgia. I mean, those guys are big tackles. Clowney just. I've never seen anything. First time I ever saw him, state championship game against Everett Golson in Myrtle Beach, who, by the way, played at Notre Dame. Stephon was the quarterback. Devontae Holloman was on that team. They were seniors. Clowney was a sophomore. And I looked and I saw this blur come off the edge and just sack Everett Golson, almost knock his helmet off. I was like, who in tarnation is that? It's like in Forrest Gump. Who in the hell is that? And I looked, it was 6'5", 196-pound sophomore Jadeveon Clowney. And Ellis Johnson already knew about him and stuff. They already had their eyes on him. So
they knew that's one you gotta get. So you build all the building blocks of that defense, and that's how they won so many of those games. I mean, really. Yep. And again, it was a different philosophy than the way Spurrier won at Florida. Spurrier would rather win 50-45 at Florida and overcome a bunch of picks and bench the quarterback and bring the other quarterback in and do all this and put the defense in bad spots, but still outthink you on an offensive scheme standpoint and score more than you do. And it's at times it bit him in the rear end, but for the most part, it was good for him. Then he just decided, you know what? I'm not going to have that kind of offense here, but I sure as hell can build a really good defense with these recruits, which they did. And I can go ahead and alter a little bit the way I call plays. And he did. And that's what Hall of Famers do. Sometimes you can teach an old dog new tricks. The only thing I was going to say about Clowney is that Clowney goes number 1 in the draft. And if you go back and you look at that draft, it was like the Texans almost did it reluctantly, but you didn't have – I'd love to go back and see who the top quarterback was in that draft, like who Clowney was taking over. My point is Clowney wasn't next generational player in the NFL. He's going to go down as a good career, but people were talking about him like he was going to reinvent the position, like he was almost going to be the Lawrence Taylor of his time. And because of injuries and because of other stuff, he wasn't. I mean, he's a really good player in the NFL, but that doesn't mean it takes away anything from the college career. And I know Steve got on him his last year. Like, he basically said, quit taking plays off. But sometimes you need that's tough love. Because back then the talk was, well, Clowney, he could be in the pros after his freshman year.
Yep.
They're making him stay for 3 years. Well, he's also getting better during those 3 years as well, and having a pretty good time in Columbia, I imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Life wasn't that bad being a college football player.
Nah, it wasn't too bad.
Not for Xavier Clowney.
Nah, it all worked out. For every name we just mentioned, it all worked out for.
It worked out pretty well. Devin Downey, the shot he made against Kentucky, the performance at Rupp Arena, that was the last win at Rupp before this past year. Devin Downey, I heard one of you say pound for pound. Yeah, he was unbelievable. He was an unbelievable, and it would have been remembered more fondly, like so many other Gamecock basketball players. It would have been remembered more fondly if they could have had just one run in the tournament, just one. Of course, Devin didn't have either. Devin, started his career at Cincinnati, and much like Sam Frederick, realized life is not always better going away from home, where everything is promised. But Devin Downey was a special. Ronaldo Balkman, he was quirky, and he was not easy to coach, but he was a physical freak, the Plastic Man. I came up with that name his freshman year, and
Odom should have been fired. Barry Sanderson will disagree with me. They should have been fired after that second NIT.
Well, that was the beginning of the end. If we're being honest,
that team was an NCAA tournament team.
That team was a Sweet 16 team. Remember, Balkman at NBA. Torrance Kinsey was an NBA Rookie of the Month guy at Memphis. Trey Kelly was always on the cusp. Brandon Wallace had a cup of coffee in the NBA. Then you had great role players like Rocky Trice, Bryce Sheldon. Like you had a Sweet 16 team. For whatever reason, those teams under Dave always they fell apart in February.
Yeah, they couldn't win in the league. SEC.
Yeah, they kept losing league games in February. And not getting blown out because they were good enough to compete, but they just kept losing close games.
I was at 3 of the 4 games in Nashville because they beat Florida twice that year. Florida won the national title. And played them a third time in the finals, and 49-47. And Trey Kelly had shot a 3 at the end. I remember it was about that close, like a half inch. Had it just gone in, the Dave Odom Miracle Tour would have happened. And Dave would have been considered one of the best coaches in Gamecock history.
And everybody liked Dave until they didn't like Dave. Like they liked his person. It's hard to not like Dave, but then they, the saddest thing for me to see, and I saw it as an announcer for teams, and I see it now when I get ready to do a game and I meet with coaches. When there's a coach that's on the hot seat and it's clearly not working out, you watch a man be reduced to kind of just desperation. You come up with these excuses, and you come up with, and you're saying things to kind of, mitigate how bad your team is underperforming. And I don't blame them for doing that. They're just trying to survive and keep their job. But it's almost like, for me, a bit of it is sad. It's just sad to see that. It's just like, gosh, this was a guy who once had a promising career, and now it's like, for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out at this particular spot. And so every coach kind of gets in that mode. Now, some will just say, the hell with it. I mean, Coach O will be like, go ahead, fire me. I'm going to get $30 million anyway. But for the most part, that's the exception to the rule. The other guys are like, well, we've had all these injuries and the schedule wasn't good. And I really believe next year's recruiting class, when we get that, it's just like, it's all kind of propaganda to get another contract. And that's when you see people it just reeks of desperation.
Give me more of the Coach O's out there. Just pay me, and I'll be glad to get the hell out of here.
Okay, $30 million, I'll be fine. I'll take it. I'm going out the door. Me right now, I don't care. I'll be fine. I'll be on the beach. We met with him that year. He literally was just laughing his
laughing his butt off for an hour. Like, I know they're going to fire me, but I don't care. That's good.
Yeah. Last picture I saw of him, he was in Vegas, and it seems like he's doing fine. So
living his best life.
Endless summer in Destin, and then when I went to Vegas and got married, we ate average jambalaya at our reception, and it was delicious. Go Joe.
Power Hour Plus.
I got to go do the Spurs up show, guys. I'm out. I got to get out.
I got to hit the road too, yo.
Yeah,
See you guys.
Bill's got to travel to Columbia, and all right. So
my apologies.
Nope, that was good stuff as always. Yep. Mike will be back on Thursday for another edition of Power Hour here, presented by Palmetto Medicare. For Mike and Hale, McGranahan, and JC and Phil inside the Gamecocks, the show built by the Barn Dough Co. Back tomorrow, Brad Crawford will join us here as we get you ready for the 2023 college football season. We'll see you then.